President-elect Donald Trump backpedaling on some of his promises? A few of his key allies are fretting over just that. The Trump campaign did promise mass deportations of 20 million undocumented people in the U.S., but he's now saying he will focus on deporting just criminals who are living in the country illegally, which is a smaller group. Although that sounds just fine to me. The Wall Street Journal reports that Trump's hardline immigration backers are withholding public criticism for now, but the softening in his rhetoric has not gone unnoticed by them. Trump's incoming border czar, Tom Homan, confirmed in an interview recently that there are no plans to perform mass raids in immigrant enclaves. Per the Journal, Homan has emphasized targeting immigrants who already have final deportation orders, since that would be easier. He did confirm in an interview with them that nobody's off the table and that they just have to be, quote, smart.
Trump also appears to be moving the goalpost on another one of his pledges, and that's reining in the prices of groceries. In an interview with Time for the magazine's Person of the Year, a title Trump claimed once again, he told them, quote, it's hard to bring things down once they're up. You know, it's very hard. That comment echoes similar statements he made in his first major sit-down interview as President-elect. Here he is with NBC News' Kristen Welker. Let's watch.
It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, you know, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries. When you buy apples, when you buy bacon, when you buy eggs, they would double and triple the price over a short period of time. And I won an election based on that. We're going to bring those prices way down.
Groceries. It is a weird word. President Trump, right again. And right, I would say, to limit the deportations to violent criminals instead of bringing in the troops to round up everyone whose papers are not in order. I think that would be a major hassle for most Americans, and that there is clearly a mandate to be more aggressive about policing illegal immigrants who have been engaged in criminal activity, other criminal activity or violent activity, and that's where they should start and focus on. And I actually think it's heartening to hear Trump signal the same thing, so I don't know who's really mad about this. Maybe the most ardent, zealous restrictionists in the conservative movement, but they're not going to criticize Trump, so who cares?
But I think there are two separate points, though. One is the merit of each individual policy, whether it's immigration, inflation, or anything else. And the other is Trump's propensity to go out on the campaign trail making often ludicrous promises and ridiculous sweeping pronouncements that he's going to carry out the largest deportation in American history. Whether you or I think that's a good idea, and I think we both think it's not a good idea, that was a promise that was made again and again to many of the people who voted for him. Now it turns out that what he's proposing is deportation of criminals. I don't have any objection to criminals who are illegal aliens being deported, but that isn't what he argued for. And furthermore, that is very similar to the existing policy under President Biden, who has also instructed ICE to go after the criminals first and to be less focused upon people who have no criminal record. It's Trump being just facile. That's what I think the problem is, that he has that propensity.
Well, at the end of the day, I just care what the actual policy is going to be, much more so than what he said, because what he says and what he does are sometimes different things. And if the policy is going to be a more muscular immigration approach, but narrowly tailored to resolving problems of crime or overcrowding of social services, that sort of thing, that I think that's exactly what the American people want.
But
should he promise something that is not?
No, it's exactly what the American people want.
Well, I guess I can't read their minds.
No, but he promised something else upon that basis they elected him. Now, I understand that what he is reverting to is a policy that you prefer. But that's not the policy upon which he was elected.
Well, he could carry out the largest deportation in American history of criminal illegal aliens, not mass deportation of door to door.
I think that's stretching a little bit far to be kind to him, because that's not what he said, right? I mean, he said largest deportation, and that there were, at one point he thought there were going to be 15 million people who were undocumented immigrants or illegal immigrants, and that we
15 million would be like all of them, would be the majority of them, and that would be very, very, it could be done. It would be done at tremendous cost in terms of the law enforcement capability. It would we'd have to scale up law enforcement. Our temporary detention centers would be quite overrun. It would be difficult to do. It could be done because a lot of these people could be identified, many of them very easily, but we don't. I don't want to see that happen. Look, if the American people wanted that and they're not going to get it because Trump's doing something less than it, oh well. But I think the more limited policy he plans to do will end up being popular.
Yeah, but I think it is the common theme of him making these promises, as with groceries. I mean, the groceries thing is, I'm going to bring everything down, and then he gets to the brink of power. He's elected to go into power, and it's like, well, that's actually quite difficult.
Well, he's right that it is
difficult
to
but
fix.
he didn't
But
say
the
that.
inflation problem is more difficult than the immigration is an enforcement problem of government. Bringing down the price of things is difficult, and different economists will argue for different things. I would argue for spending less recklessly, devaluing the currency less, and that kind of thing. But also, I think the tariffs he wants to do will have an inflationary effect, so we probably shouldn't do them, but maybe he's just going to threaten to do them. I don't know.
Yeah.
We shall see.
Shall.
Speaking of Trump, the Washington Post is reporting that President-elect played Cupid, bringing together HHS nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and some members of the big pharma establishment. According to the Post, Trump broke the ice between RFK Jr., a longtime critic of drug companies, and CEOs of Pfizer, Eli Lilly, and trade group Pharma. The group was brought together at a dinner that Trump hosted at Mar-a-Lago recently.
According to people familiar with the situation, the topics discussed included the role pharmacy managers have on prescription drug pricing, the boosting of US-based drug production, and, of course, vaccines. Kennedy pushed the need for more research on vaccinating infants, apparently. When he tried to bring up vaccines and autism, the report is that Trump redirected the conversation. Now, RFK Jr. is heading to Washington this week, where he will be meeting with senators ahead of his confirmation hearing to spearhead the Department of Health and Human Services.
Well, look, if there has to be some level of good, favorable communication between the head of this important agency that does allocate research money and is responsible for policies that very much affect these drug companies, so they have to have at least a cordial relationship. So I think this is a good thing to bring them together and let heads of Big Pharma hear Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s criticisms of how they operate. This is a time where we're paying a lot of attention right now to the price of healthcare, the price of healthcare services and drugs and that kind of thing. And, Trump didn't want to relitigate the vaccines and autism debate, which probably speaks to his genuinely good political judgment at various times.
But I mean, Kennedy has been antagonistic to a very forceful degree about drug companies themselves. I think that's what gives people pause about this report.
Yeah.
I, as you know, am critical of Kennedy, particularly on the vaccine issue, but less so in terms of his criticisms of the way Big Pharma and other corporate interests can kind of tilt the playing field to their own advantage. And so to have him sort of buddying up to these guys, I think, or at least reportedly doing so, does sort of seem a bit strange given the vigor of his criticisms previously.
Well, I don't know if it's buddying up. I mean, we didn't get a lot of detail in exactly what was discussed. I mean, you can take a meeting with someone and not be necessarily buddies with them.
No, you can, but
they have to work together in a baseline level of, here are the policies we're considering doing. What is your input on them?
No, they do, but one of the CEOs, I can't remember which corporation, seemed particularly impressed by how the meeting had gone. And any time that those guys are very happy about how things go, that seems to cut across Robert F. Kennedy's overall worldview. Again, I personally don't want to get into the position of being overly defensive of Kennedy because I am not a big fan of his, but the antagonism toward drug companies, big pharma, pharmaceutical managers, middlemen who are reaping big profits, that is, I think, the broadest element of his appeal. And so that if that goes by the wayside, that's a problem.
Sure, and that used to be a major progressive talking point about, I mean, more than just a talking point, a view of this industry that vis-a-vis the person of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a celebrated Democratic thought leader who is now part of the Trump administration, and that has become not just a progressive issue, but one for many conservatives because of COVID and because of other issues. So we shall, I suppose, see how combative the policies of the Trump administration are to major drug companies and other people in the healthcare industry. Stick with us, more Rising right after this.